Right, hello guys, this wasn't a video that I had planned. In fact, I was working on something else, so let's see if my voice holds out because it's not good today. Again, not a very set script, so bear with me. I'll try to stop it rambling on too much. I've kind of bullet pointed some stuff and I want to just kind of talk. So I guess first off, I want to start by saying, would you like me to throw in here on the channel from time to time the odd bit of news about Games Workshop stuff? Not everything that's coming along, but things like, you know, maybe with a release or a discussion about something that's changing at Games Workshop, something that, you know, I find personally interesting. It's never going to replace lore, okay? Sit down, all right, calm down. But as you guys know, I want to help always make people more aware about the miniature side of things. I have some other videos talking about this coming soon. And doing that kind of thing ties in specifically with what I want to talk about next, which is the Sisters of Battle release, which happened this weekend. Now, like many of Games Workshop's 40k product lines, the Sisters of Battle has been a release that is long overdue. It's been many years since they've seen new miniatures, and Games Workshop is steadily going through its catalogue and updating. There are many other armies and factions which are awaiting. Now, before I specifically speak to this release, I want to just make one thing really clear. And that's that things are often represented these days as being very clear-cut, whatever the issue. It's either one or two. It's X or it's Y. Let me also be really clear. I'm not talking about politics, okay? I'm talking about everything. Most things that we see in the media, they try to boil things down to things being very simple. It's good, it's bad. And this is for the very simple, very obvious reason that people do not like to consider the reality. For most issues, most problems, most things that we have to deal with are in actuality very grey. Which gives me the opportunity to use one of my favourite quotes to Jack Ryan from Clear and Present Danger. The world is grey, Jack. In reference to some moral ambiguity of military action, of course, but it is true that nothing is simple, okay? And people just don't like to get into all that detail because it takes time, you have to think about it, blah, blah, blah. You know, people want to know there and then who's guilty, who's innocent. You know, that's just usually about as complicated as most people like things to be. But we can apply that kind of thinking to consumer issues as much as anything else. You see this all the time. People are very reactionary, especially around releases. And this is why I'm not a very big fan of YouTube channels which feature, you know, wall-to-wall glowing praise, one video after another for large video game developers, games, big companies of any kind, because very few large companies deserve unfettered glowing praise, and it's almost always totally disingenuous on behalf of the producer, or if it is sincere, then that person is either just totally naive or they're very willfully ignorant. I also am not a fan of channels that feature unending blinkered criticism. And I've started to watch a few channels sometimes which are very critiquing of a company or a game or whatever, but after a while I'm just like, oh, it's just like every video is like that. Every video without question is like that. And I'm just like, okay, I get it. I'm not interested at that point because they're just clearly very biased in the other direction. I often also think that's very deliberate because they know that by riling people up, it's a great way to generate views and an audience, or perhaps the person themselves have just lost all perspective because they're churning out video after video with the same tone and the same focus. Now, I say all this not directing it at any one or any channel, because I'm sure you yourselves are more than capable of deciding these things for yourself. It's broadly true across YouTube, across genres, across the media, that these kind of things exist. There's always people that kind of lean in certain directions, and some people just really lean into that. Now, I would hope that many of you by now will know that I myself try my best to always look in that kind of middle area. Sometimes I lean more one way than another, but most of the time I try to look into the grey area. This is how I always try to live my life. It's how I like to look at most things. I like to judge stuff on its merit, specifically in those situations, and sometimes, of course, you have to place it in a wider context as well. And it's, you know, look, it's not to say that I am faultless either. I've said to you guys many times, a big problem people have these days is being able to just put their hands up and say, yep, you know what, I called that totally wrong. In fact, times when I've said this to people, when I say to people, you know what, actually, I agree, yeah, I was wrong. I can see now that this is a very different situation. It catches people totally off guard because they don't expect me to turn around and go, you know what, actually, yeah, you've convinced me. I think it's different. That happens so rarely these days that it totally blindsides people. They just don't see it coming. And like I say, I think we will be a lot better off if people were able to do that. But anyway, like I said, you know, when it comes to games and other things, I've been wrong many times when things I thought looked really good or were pitched really good and just turned out to not be good. You know, I'm only human like any of us. I'm not an infallible person. And when I've covered things, I always try to present the good and the bad. I try to look at things from as an objective perspective as I can. I've always tried to do that. This all might sound a bit grandiose and, you know, but I wanted to state my perspective, kind of give you the spectrum of where we are. So then we come to the Sisters of Battle release, okay, the box set release that they were doing this weekend. They're also doing some books and so on. Now, those of you who follow me on Twitter will know by now that I am not a big fan of Games Workshop special edition releases, okay. These are like the limited edition releases, not the main releases, the limited edition, which this was. They had multiple limited edition stuff going out this weekend. And the reason being is that they seem to underestimate demand almost on every release. And this has led to the growth of what can really only be described as a burgeoning black market on eBay, where you see products being sold for twice or even 3 times their retail price. This is not healthy for any community. Moreover, it is not healthy for a company, because why would you want to see your consumers who can afford to spending out money that they could be spending on your products? That is surely counterproductive. However, it does highlight a talking point that I have maintained for the longest time, which is that price is subjective. It's like, I get people ask me, is this worth getting? Is it worth getting? Well, you've somewhat invalidated your own question within the question, haven't you? Because asking me, is it worth it, is asking me where do I place something's value based on my own position, my own disposable income, and how I subjectively value an item. Now you might say, oh Luton, you're overreading that situation. He's probably just meaning, do you think it's good or not? Yeah, I hear you. But more often people are saying, look, for the money, is it worth me purchasing? I can't answer that because I don't know what's happening with you. If you earn 1/4 of what I do, or you earn 5 times what I do, what you perceive as being worth to you is going to be entirely different than what I see. But anyway, that's a whole topic for another day for me to discuss. But anyway, look, in fairness, Games Workshop can't stop people from doing this. They can't restrict people from reselling their products. What they have done already is quite positively restricting accounts to only purchase one item, one limited item per account, which did not used to be the case. You used to be able to buy multiple books on release day, which is really how this whole nonsense got started. But anyway, so look, I missed out on buying the Sisters box on release day from the Games Workshop site, but thankfully I am very lucky in that Element Games have managed to help me out, and I have secured a box of those Sisters that I can showcase for you guys, showcase you the codex, the minis, etc., because I really wanted these Sisters release to coincide with my development of the new Luton Necropolis story that I've been working on. That's why I put those things together this last week, because I wanted, as I said in the video, a minor order of Sisters to be a core part of that narrative. So a really big thanks to Element, because they'll help me bring this together. And to be clear to you guys, not a complimentary box from Element either. I'm still paying for it. They've just helped me in being able to secure a box. Now, at the same time, whilst I say I'm still paying for it from Element, everything that you get from Element is discounted more than the Games Workshop store. So if you're in the UK and Europe, you should really check out Element. I also bought the new Necromunda stuff, because I think most people agreed the price point was a little high on that box, and by buying it through Element, it was much more affordable. Now, before this starts to sound like an advert, which is not, I'm genuinely trying to tell you guys, look at this stuff, you'll save money. If you use my link below each video as well, you will earn me a small commission, so that helps me support me and the channel. But seriously, I'm not joking. Go and check this stuff out. So right, let's get to the release day, right? It was chaos. The release day was chaos within I was there first thing in the morning, right? Bang on. Within the first 15 minutes, the site crashed. Many people, me included, who had the items I wanted in my shopping basket, I was there, I was ready, attempting to pay, and that's when the site crashed. The site was then restarted, but it seemed to go up. It was rolling out in different parts of the UK faster than others, and it led to me losing out on multiple products. I was thankfully able to secure the most important thing for me on the day, which was the special edition book Mark of Faith, which looks a really beautiful book in its presentation. There's few special release books that I've wanted as bad as I wanted that, so I was very, very happy to get that. And again, to be clear, the books and so on, you can't get that from Element, you can only get that from Games Workshop, so okay. Now, understandably, this has led to some community dissatisfaction, because many people have missed out on these new products because of how that happened on the release morning. Now, you can still go down to the stores, Games Workshop stores, if you're in the UK, Friday 29th of November, and you're going to be pretty lucky to pick up a box. You need to get down there very early and probably have a fight outside to make sure that you're in the doors first. Also, disclaimer, don't have a fight outside. Now, here's the thing. While the Sisters box is very desirable, all these minis, the minis in the box, are going to be released in fairly short order. So really, the thing is, all these boxes represent is an element of exclusivity and some extra design details, etc., which is what makes them so desirable. The main question is, cynical hat off, did Games Workshop deliberately do anything wrong here? Now, on the morning of the ordering process going totally tits up, if you had asked me there and then, I would have said, yes, 100%, it's total nonsense. And this is because in that morning, I was very unhappy. I was frustrated, irritated, I wasn't pleased. Now, since then, and yes, Element Games have helped me out get the box, but, put that aside, seriously, try to put that aside. If you'd have asked me now, even now, I would have said, no, I don't think so. And I will very happily explain to you why I think this, okay? Now, here's the thing. Games Workshop are a big company, okay? They've seen some massive growth in the past 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, perhaps way beyond what they likely even expected. And this growth isn't slowing down for them. In all honesty, I actually think Games Workshop have struggled a little in being able to predict and properly prepare for this kind of growth. And I don't say that either as some kind of slur to them or to, especially to not diminish the work that I am sure goes on behind the scenes. If you are thinking fairly, then you would know as well as I do that any big release, whether it's a video game or a miniature, there's a big workload on just ordinary people that are working at these companies, and they've undoubtedly done their very best to ensure that this release was smooth. It was very likely an immensely stressful time for those people. It's not fair to lay the blame for anything like that going south on them. Most of the time when people are criticizing companies, it's not aimed at people that are having to deal with that kind of stuff. It's aimed more at the sort of overseeing management and so on and so on. But again, that's not what I think happened here. In fact, what I think is actually happening is, like I say, it's quite simply that Games Workshop have been finding it hard to adapt to the scale of interest that has been presented to them and has been growing for the company. However, okay, before anybody bites my hand off, all right, I do also think that Games Workshop are, of course, trying to hype and build up excitement for limited products because, yeah, of course, a limited product literally has no other reason to exist other than to build hype. And it works. That's why those kind of things exist, all right? But I think, quite honestly, the growth that Games Workshop has seen, even, okay, if your management are making the right choices, I think it's happened so fast and to such a scale, it's undoubtedly been very difficult for them to adapt their business thinking, I guess, to sort of cope with those kind of things. But I do think that it is going in the right direction, and I'll talk about this a bit more in a minute. Now, one of the most surprising and I think positive things coming from this is that Games Workshop put out a post to their own community page on the website. You can read it for yourselves. I've linked it below. The key points they talk about are as follows. They say that we're so excited to see the love you folks have for the new range of products. Everyone here at Games Workshop put a huge amount of creative energy into remaking this faction. It's been humbling to see your response. This weekend we celebrated the redesigned Sisters of Battle with pre-orders, special launch set, healthy supply, sold out online in record time. They say, even so, we know that there are plenty of folks out there who missed out, and to you we'd like to say we're sorry. We produced a large number of this box, but even our optimistic estimates didn't anticipate the full scale of the demand. They also say we're working on some pretty cool fixes for this kind of thing going forward, though. I'd like to hear that expanded upon, what they're actually going to do. Right now, we're putting the finishing touches on a new factory next door to the HQ so we can make even more Warhammer models, and we've just started work on a massive distribution hub so we'll be able to stock up and ship more Warhammer than ever. These are really key points to take into consideration. They say those fixes are a little way off. We want to assure you that we're on it, and you can rest easy knowing that when the full release of the Adeptus Sororitas land in 2020, there's going to be plenty to go around, which you would obviously hope. Now, you can be as cynical as you choose to be, cynical hat on. I used to be immensely cynical about all these things, especially more and more with, say, like Battlefield over the years, right? But after a while, even my perspective was getting distorted with Battlefield because it became so hard to know what was up or down anymore. Now, I also know that some people in the 40k community definitely see Games Workshop as this heartless corporate beast that cares about profit almost at the expense of anything else. I just don't think that's the case. I think that they criticize me, but I just honestly don't think that's the case. I think that they genuinely did try to anticipate demand for this limited release, even if they knew, okay, not everybody's gonna be able to get it. I don't think they anticipated just how many people wanted this, but they just didn't come close to realizing it. There are clearly things that they could do to gauge some more community interest, perhaps. Perhaps there's even scope for some kind of deposit scheme where you can put a little bit of money down ahead of time to ensure that you receive your product. This is actually what I seem to recall some stores did in the past when it came to taking pre-orders of, say, video game systems, things like this. But like I said, most of the time when you have big problems like this, people aim it at the management. Like I said, I genuinely think in this situation, I don't think it's even really a management issue. And like I said, we'll talk about this now. They themselves, they said that there are physical limitations going on here in terms of finishing a new factory. I think this is a really important aspect that many people just don't consider, which is that Games Workshop for the longest time were not a massive company in the scheme of things, all right? Within the world of miniature production and tabletop games, yes, they've always been present and been a major player for decades. But if we're talking about big, in our understanding of big, say, similar to, say, AAA games publishers and so on, not quite in that realm, okay? Games Workshop, though, are quickly headed in that direction. Their growth has been positively exponential. And you know what they say, with growth, you get pain. Games Workshop are going through that pain, and so are we, the consumers. And like I said, I don't have any deep knowledge about the inner workings of Games Workshop or anything like this, but my best guess is that Games Workshop are going through a difficult, but I would say positive change, where they have to adapt to fast growing consumer demand. If again you're being fair and you're being objective about how you think this process is taking place, it should be obvious that that kind of process is not an easy thing to do, okay? Paying out for a huge new production factory is not something that you're going to do until you're sure that it's going to be a smart investment to make, because it's probably costing, I don't even know, ridiculous sums of money. You want to ensure that the demand is there before you put in on a new giant investment like that. You also want to be sure that this is something that's going to pay for itself and then continue to earn you profit that makes it worthwhile into the future. You're not going to do that just off of like a one year weird spike in sales. And you know, I'm no economist or business major or anything like this, but a lot of this stuff is surely fairly common sense. You know, you don't want to throw out a load of money on expanding your business too quickly before you're sure it's going to be a smart investment. The problems that come with that in the meanwhile are that consumers can be frustrated by the lack of service from you as a company, and that's the difficult thing. It's a constant balancing act between keeping your consumers happy and not putting too much risk. Now, Games Workshop clearly have made some really major steps forward with the announcement of things like Eisenhorn. They're pushing out new release after new release, major story updates till the lore continue. Let's give credit where credit's due. They've come out and fully said, we're sorry that people were not satisfied with this release. And look, let's put things in perspective. Let's keep things real. Okay, if we just sidestep into the world of video games for a minute, there are plenty of companies, developers, publishers who will swear black is white rather than admit that they screwed up or that they didn't get things right, you know? So before we pin Games Workshop to the wall, I think it's worth considering that things are never as clear cut as they might appear in the heat of the moment. Most complications or problems that we all face have a myriad of factors at play. I think Games Workshop are putting out some really fantastic new miniatures, something that we haven't seen for, you know, a long time in the grand scheme of things of 40k. You know, they've been posting new great narratives on their site for free for weeks now, okay? Their community aspect on the site hasn't been stronger. There's a ton of stuff that Games Workshop is doing right, and it is building the community and building things in the right direction. So while I hate to see things like limited editions appearing on eBay for 3 times the price, and I would just say I think Games Workshop have no desire to totally piss off their consumers for the sake of guaranteeing sales on a limited release, which isn't going to constitute the bulk release of that product line. You know, I just don't think that's sensible. I don't think that's believable. And like I always say, you guys, you can make your own mind up at the end of the day. I can only tell you what I myself think about these things. You know, if you believe me or you believe I'm sincere or not beyond that, that's entirely up to you. It's your own call. Words are all well and good. It's actions that count. This applies to a large amount of what Games Workshop have on the horizon, no doubt, both in the lore and the miniatures. So, you know, let's see what 2020 brings. They've said that they have this new factory coming soon. If by the middle of next year we're still seeing these huge chaotic releases, limited edition or not, with tons of people missing out, I think then I would be less forgiving. But you know, let's hope that that is not where we are in 6 months' time. They've seen what can happen here. They can see how people can be frustrated. Let's hope they try and clear things and, you know, move in a more positive direction. So as always, guys, please share your thoughts down below. If you want to hear me talk now and then, not all the time, not replacing the lore stuff, if you want to hear me now and then talk about stuff like this, please hit the like as always. This is Luton. I'll see you in the next one.